And then we talk about the resiliency force, and this is a force of what they call the E3, but it's actually now E4. When you're talking about the Brits, the French, as well as the Germans, and now actually the Poles have a force west of the Dnieper River, which means it's out of contact.
Keith Kellogg, US Special Envoy for Ukraine, has indicated that Polish troops will be among those sent on a potential peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. Donald Tusk's government rushed to correct Kellogg. The government's decision is clear. Poland is not sending and will not send troops to Ukraine. This is simply a scenario in which we will not participate. Besides, someone is trying to draw conclusions from a program in which an American general quite freely talks about the world. Let us be serious about serious matters. The problem with the current government is that Keith Kellogg, an experienced American military officer and diplomat, was talking about the very specific terms of the agreement proposed to the parties to oversee compliance with the ceasefire in Ukraine. The image this paints is unambiguous. It is hardly surprising that the public is wondering whether there are not some negotiations going on that are being kept secret by the current government, because the presidential election campaign is underway and it could undermine them. It is quite clear that the Polish public opposes sending Polish soldiers, currently guarding NATO's eastern flank, east to Ukraine. This is especially true since the beginning of the war, Poland has been the main aid hub for Ukraine. As we know, it was the countries of the European Union that made the decision that it was necessary to send troops to Ukraine that would guarantee stability there. There was to be our country as well, because we are a large country with a large army. But as we know, our public opinion is unequivocally against this. The Tusk government has been arguing since the start of the presidential election campaign that there is no possibility of Polish soldiers going to Ukraine. In early May, this is what the head of the Defense Ministry said on the topic. You are pulling out a document that does not contain any particular mission or operation in Ukraine because none exists. After all, the President's approval is needed because it is the President, as head of the armed forces, who must agree to send Polish soldiers out of the country. In view of the total lack of support for such a decision, and in view of the real shape of Polish-Ukrainian relations, there is no justification for such a decision. Interestingly, there are rumours that the government's approach to the plan for Polish military presence in Ukraine after the elections may change 180 degrees. Such a scenario is suggested by this interview on Radio Tok FM. Tusk said Polish soldiers will not participate in a European contingent that does not exist. If it were to come to that, he didn't say in one that doesn't exist. He was discussing one that is to be created. No, he said specifically, because such a contingent does not exist. So the moment it is created and Tusk can change his mind, he can say, in this contingent, which is the one we want, we can agree to the participation of our soldiers. And in the meantime, he will score points with Menson's anti-Ukrainian electorate. We know that in Western Europe they're saying, today is election season in Poland, so we can't pledge that Polish soldiers will go to Ukraine. But once the campaign is over, we will return to the topic on a completely different basis. There are many questions about the whole issue, also about the recent visit to Kiev by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, along with the heads of Germany, France and the United Kingdom. These are the countries that declare their readiness to send their troops to Ukraine in connection with the conflict that is currently taking place there. And Donald Tusk, among those leaders, went to Ukraine recently. Therefore, this presence of Donald Tusk among countries or coalitions of countries willing to send their troops to Ukraine is not accidental. We don't really know what was agreed upon there. Perhaps it was the details of the mission of Polish soldiers in Ukraine. Now we have a statement by Kellogg, Donald Trump's advisor on Ukraine, that there are talks with Poland to send soldiers to Ukraine. This is why the upcoming presidential election is so important. Donald Tusk is not an independent politician, and neither is his party's candidate, Rafał Trzaskowski. God forbid, if Rafał Trzaskowski becomes the head of the armed forces, he will sign whatever Donald Tusk wants. Since the coalition took power on the 13th of December 2023, it has become apparent that the current Prime Minister is doing what Berlin wants him to do. His recent visit to Kiev only confirmed this. The upcoming presidential election will show whether Donald Tusk will manage to close the system or fully consolidate power in Poland.